I've been telling myself the same story for years. I'm bad with money because my dad was bad with money. I'm anxious because I had a difficult childhood. It feels like my past is a tattoo I can't remove. And on top of that, I'm exhausted trying to be the perfect version of myself. The one who meditates, eats clean, and never loses their temper. Is there a way out of both prisons?
Oh, there absolutely is.
Huh.
I mean, it is so incredibly human to feel exactly that way.
Mm.
That deep, bone-weary exhaustion of just carrying your history on your back,
Yeah.
right? All while you're simultaneously running on this endless treadmill of self-improvement. You're definitely not alone in feeling like those are two distinct, heavily guarded prisons.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're trapped in two places at once and you don't even know who holds the key.
Right. But there is a way out. And to show you the door, I want to share something profoundly liberating from Chapter 8 of a book called The Nature of Personal Reality. The author, Jane Roberts, states this beautifully and explicitly. She writes, "The point of power is in the present, not the past, not the future."
The point of power is in the present. I mean, it sounds simple on the surface, but when you really let it sink in, it completely upends how we usually think about our baggage.
It really does. It suggests the power isn't in the event that hurt you 20 years ago, but sitting right here with you in this room
Hmm.
today. It changes the entire architecture of how we view our
It's
lives.
a huge shift.
And, it goes hand in hand with another massive paradigm shift from Chapter 10 of that same book. So if you're tired of trying to be the perfect version of yourself, listen to this quote. "You're not trying to become a better you. You are trying to become more of the you that you already are."
Oh, wow. I feel a physical sense of relief just hearing that because we spend so much time culturally obsessed with, like, optimization and leveling up.
Yes, exactly. The endless optimization.
It's exhausting.
Right. So the idea that the goal isn't to be better, but just to be more of what is already there, that fundamentally rewrites the rules of the game. It completely rewrites them. And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive into the source material. We are going to learn how to reclaim the past and how to finally take off that heavy, exhausting mask of who you think you should be.
I am so ready for this because to escape those prisons, we first have to understand how we built the bars, right?
Precisely, which requires a deep look at the core teachings of the Seth material, specifically how this philosophy diagnoses our relationship with time and, well, our own identity. So let's start with time.
Okay. Because we're conditioned from birth to view the past as this fixed, unchangeable, concrete block, right? Like a permanent record.
Yes, a ledger of facts. But the assertion in Chapter 8 is radically different. Seth says the past is not a fixed, inescapable prison. Instead, it is a story that you are telling now, right now. And because you are telling it now, you have the power to change the narrative. When you change the story, you change the past's influence on your present.
Wait, hold on. I want to push back on that immediately. Because if someone listening suffered severe trauma or abuse or poverty, telling them their past is just a story sounds, I don't know, dismissive. It almost sounds like victim blaming.
Oh, I completely understand why it sounds that way. And that is the most crucial distinction we have to make right up front. The philosophy is not denying objective physical reality. You're not denying what happened.
Right, because the events actually happened. The eviction notice was real. The painful divorce was real.
Absolutely real. Those physical coordinates in space and time, they occurred. They are factual. But Seth makes a sharp distinction between the physical event and your psychological experience of the event. The event itself is over. It exists in a finished state.
Okay. So what is active then?
Your experience of it, your emotional relationship to it, and crucially, the power it holds over your current choices. That is entirely a psychological construction happening right now, today. You are choosing your relationship to it.
Oh, I see. So the trauma isn't the event itself. The trauma is the echo of the event playing on a loop in my present consciousness.
Exactly. It's the echo. Every time you remember something, you aren't pulling a dusty file out of a cabinet. You are biologically and psychologically reconstructing that memory in the present moment.
So because I'm telling a story right now, from my current vantage point, I can alter it.
Yes, that is exactly what the point of power is in the present means. When you change the story you are telling today, you literally alter the past's influence on your present reality.
Okay. I want to make sure we ground this mechanism for everyone listening. Can we walk through a concrete example? Because the transition from passive victim of history to active storyteller is a massive shift in perspective.
Let's do that. Imagine two different people who experience the exact same traumatic childhood. Let's say they grew up in extreme poverty with a severely emotionally volatile parent.
Okay, so the historical facts for both are identical.
Right. The cold winters, the shouting, the fear, all factual. Now, they grow up. The first person tells their present story as, I am a victim. They think the world is inherently unsafe and I am fundamentally broken because of what was done to me.
Which, is a completely understandable psychological adaptation. If the environment was unsafe, your brain wires itself to expect danger everywhere.
It is entirely understandable. But we have to look at the result of that present-day storytelling. Every single time that person tells the I am a victim story in the present, their nervous system reacts as if they are still in that cold, loud house.
Wow. Yeah, so they view every current challenge like a difficult boss or a disagreement with a partner through that exact lens of victimization.
Exactly. The past is actively reaching into the present and dictating their reality.
Huh.
But now look at the second person. They experience the exact same historical events,
But they have a different story.
a different present interpretation. The story they choose to tell now is, I became resilient. I learned how to be deeply self-reliant.
So they're looking at the exact same raw data, but organizing it into a completely different thesis.
Precisely. And because of that present interpretation, their entire life trajectory is different. They move through the world with agency. Their nervous system isn't locked in a permanent state of emergency.
Right. They aren't pretending the pain didn't happen. It's not toxic positivity.
No, not at all. They haven't claimed the abuse was good for them, but they have stripped those events of the power to victimize them today. They are acting upon the past from their point of power in the present.
I love that. You realize the past doesn't have its own battery pack. It only has the energy you feed it today. If you unplug the victim narrative and plug in the resilience narrative, the past goes from being a weight holding you down to a foundation you stand on.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. You are redirecting the energy. And that leads us directly to the second major concept from Seth's diagnosis, which moves from our relationship with time to our relationship with ourselves.
Which is the second prison, identity.
Exactly. Chapter 10 introduces this profound clash between what we can call the idealized self and the natural self.
Oh, the idealized self. That's the one we all put on our resumes and social media profiles. The one who wakes up at 5 a.m., drinks green juice, never yells at the kids, and is always endlessly productive.
The exhaustingly perfect mask, yes. The idealized self is an artificial construct made entirely of shoulds. It's who you think you should be to earn love or achieve success or just be accepted by society.
And maintaining that mask takes so much energy. It's like having a dozen background apps open on your phone at all times. You wonder why your battery's at 10% by noon.
Yes, the energy drain is immense because it requires constant conscious maintenance. And beneath that heavy armor is your natural self. The source material defines this as who you are when you are entirely relaxed, unguarded, and free from external expectations.
So the gap between the idealized self and the natural self is where all our daily exhaustion lives.
Exactly. That gap is where anxiety and burnout thrive.
I have to pause here, though, because I know what the listener's immediate skepticism is going to be. If I just stop trying, if I just let my natural self take over, won't I just eat junk food, skip work, and yell at people?
That is such a common worry.
Right. We have this belief that if we don't rigidly control ourselves, our natural state is basically feral. We think the shoulds are the only things keeping us civilized.
That is the core fear right there. We've been taught that human nature is inherently flawed and needs constant discipline. But Seth's diagnosis completely rejects that. Seth argues the natural self is inherently cooperative, creative, and curious.
So the urge to lash out or shut down isn't actually the natural self.
No. Those destructive impulses are the warped, pressurized reactions of a natural self that has been suffocated by the idealized self. It's the symptom of the mask, not the reality of the face underneath it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So Seth is saying stop trying to fix the natural self because it isn't broken, it's just buried under shoulds.
Exactly. You don't need a repairman, you need an excavator. The natural self naturally seeks fulfillment and connection when it's allowed to breathe.
I love that distinction between repairing and excavating, but, it's easy to discuss this in theory. How does this actually play out in a real, messy human life? Because dropping the mask and rewriting your past sounds incredibly daunting.
It is daunting. And to see how it operates under pressure, we have to look at the lived experience of the author herself. Jane Roberts' life is the ultimate proof that this isn't just abstract theory written from an ivory tower.
Right, because when we think of someone channeling cosmic material, we picture a serene guru meditating on a mountain, totally detached from reality.
Far from it. Jane was the polar opposite of that archetype. The biographical context from the sources paints a stark picture. Her early life in Saratoga Springs was brutal. Her parents divorced when she was 3. They lived on welfare.
And she spent time in an orphanage, too, didn't she?
Yes, a strictly run Catholic orphanage. Because her mother, Marie, was bedridden with severe rheumatoid arthritis. And Marie wasn't a gentle, suffering figure. She was incredibly angry, demanding, and abusive.
To be a child navigating extreme poverty, an orphanage, and an angry, bedridden parent, the survival energy required is just staggering.
And the psychological abuse was highly specific. Marie used to tell young Jane repeatedly that she had bad blood. She claimed Jane's father had syphilis, essentially telling her daughter she was fundamentally contaminated from birth.
That is horrific to hear that from your primary caregiver when your identity is forming. You don't just shake off that kind of shame when you turn 18.
You don't. And for years, Jane understandably felt like a victim. She carried the weight of her mother's accusations and the trauma of her childhood. She was trapped in that first prison. But as she began bringing through the Seth material, Seth challenged her to apply these concepts to herself, to reframe her story from her current point of power.
So how did she reframe something as heavy as bad blood? You can't just pretend your mother wasn't abusive.
She did it by asking a different set of questions from her present moment. Instead of asking, why did this terrible thing happen to me, which inherently victimizes you, Seth guided her to ask, what did I learn? What hidden strengths did I gain?
Ah, so she actively changed the lens to find the utility in the pain.
Exactly. She realized her fierce independence and deep psychological curiosity were forged navigating her mother's volatile moods. The pain didn't magically disappear, but by reclaiming her authorship, it stopped defining her entire existence.
She moved from the victim narrative to the resilient narrative.
Yes, she used her point of power in the present to extract wisdom. But, human nature is rarely clean. She also had a second great struggle later in life, dealing with the mask of the idealized self.
Right, because as the Seth material became known globally, she suddenly had all this intense public pressure on her.
Immense pressure. People expected a proper psychic. Someone perpetually serious, deeply spiritual, always serene. They expected a guru floating above material concerns.
But that wasn't her natural self at all, was it?
Not at all. Jane was remarkably earthy. She was funny. She was irreverent. She was a fierce skeptic who constantly questioned her own work, and she loved reading cheap detective novels to unwind.
That's amazing.
And when she was conducting sessions, she liked to have a beer and smoke cigarettes.
I just love that image, the profound nature of the universe being dictated by a woman in a rocking chair with a beer and a cigarette. But I imagine the tension between who she actually was and who the world thought she should be became really destructive.
It tore her apart. She developed what she called a sinful self. This harsh inner critic, judging her for not being a perfect spiritual figure. She was suffocating her natural self behind a rigid mask of goodness. And Chapter 8 talks about how repressing your natural energy creates, quote, demons.
Wait, demons? Like actual monsters?
No. Demons in this framework are just repressed, unexpressed natural energy. When you suppress your spontaneity, that energy turns inward and attacks the system. For Jane, her creative work suffered massive blocks.
Her body started keeping the score, right?
Literally. She experienced terrible physical symptoms. She began suffering from severe physical immobility, ironically mirroring her mother's arthritis. She was paralyzing herself with the pressure to be someone she wasn't.
Oh, wow. The pressure actually made her physically ill, so how did she break out of it?
By doing exactly what Chapter 10 suggests. She had to accept that she was not trying to become a better, more spiritual Jane. She had to become more of the Jane she already was. When she stopped performing and fully accepted her natural self, the beer-drinking, skeptical writer, everything shifted.
She stopped apologizing for the detective novels.
She did, and her creative work flowed infinitely better. Her physical health, while complex, improved because she dropped the acute pressure of the mask.
If Jane Roberts could rewrite a deeply painful childhood story and then later drop the heavy mask of being an international spiritual guru, then the listener can absolutely do this in their daily life.
It is entirely available to anyone. But it requires practice. You have to actively build the new neural pathways. So, we want to introduce 2 practical techniques based directly on chapters 8 and 10.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics. What is the first technique for dealing with the prison of the past?
Technique 1 is called Reframe One Memory. Pick a specific bad memory. Not your deepest trauma, just start with something manageable, like a failure at work or a painful breakup. Tell the story again, but this time you are only allowed to focus on what was learned or what hidden strength was gained from it.
So, for example, I learned I can survive hard things, or that failure redirected me to where I needed to be.
Exactly. You are operating from the point of power in the present. And just to be clear, this is not pretending it didn't hurt.
Right, it's not toxic positivity. You aren't saying getting fired was fun.
Precisely. You are exercising your psychological authority. You are reclaiming authorship of your own life story. Now, technique 2 targets the identity trap. We call this spot the mask.
How does this one work in our day-to-day lives?
Today, just notice one thing you do exclusively because you think you should. It's about catching the idealized self in the act.
Like agreeing in a meeting when you actually fundamentally disagree, or hiding a quirky part of yourself to seem professional.
Yes, just notice it. Catch yourself wearing the mask. And when you do, gently ask yourself, what would my natural self do here?
What would my natural self do here? I love that.
And to anchor why this is so powerful, listen to this exact quote from the source material. The natural self is spontaneous. It does not need to be forced into goodness or productivity.
Oh man, that is so liberating. It does not need to be forced into goodness. That feels like the exact opposite of the rigid self-improvement treadmills we usually run on.
It really is. When you remove the artificial dam of shoulds, your natural self will spontaneously seek meaningful contribution. And that sets up our homework perfectly. We are issuing a 24-hour challenge with 2 parts.
All right, lay it on us. What's part 1?
Over the next 24 hours, part 1, catch yourself telling an old I always or I never story, like I always mess up or I never have enough time.
The greatest hits of our inner critic.
Exactly. When you catch it, pause. Stop whatever you are doing and say out loud to yourself, that was then, I am creating now.
That was then. I am creating now. It literally interrupts the loop. Okay, I love that. And part 2?
Part 2, do one small thing today just because it feels like you and absolutely not because you should. Wear the comfortable clothes instead of the trendy ones. Skip a productive chore and just rest on the couch.
And as you do that, as you execute part 2, pay close attention to the physical sensation in your body. Notice the physical relief that follows dropping that should task. I mean, feeling lighter, like finally setting down a heavy backpack that you didn't even realize you were carrying.
That physical relief is the feeling of the energy returning to your system. Next time, we tackle the big practical topics. Money and the art of allowing, chapters 9 and 11. We'll learn why money is a symbol of your creative energy and how to stop hustling and start allowing. This is where the inner work meets real life.
The leap from internal psychology to tangible things like money is going to be fascinating to unpack.
It's going to be great. But for now, as you step back into your daily routine, I want to leave you with one last thing to ponder on your own. If your point of power is entirely in the present, and you successfully drop the heavy story of your past right now, what completely unimaginable probable future just opened up for you?